Perfect. Should we give it another minute just to see if anyone stops in, or should I get started? All right. Uh, is it good to get started?
Yeah, we should be all set with everything.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Glasgow, and I work with the University of Nevada, Reno. And today I am here to talk to you about an online training program that I developed for my Makerspace students and for our patrons. So we'll go ahead and get started. There we go. So I work with the University of Nevada, Reno, and just for a little bit of context, our university is about 21,000 undergraduate and graduate students. And I specifically work with the De La Mare Science and Engineering Library. So this is a smaller branch STEM library that's still affiliated with the rest of our university library system, but it is located separate south of campus. We are a STEM library, so we have a 3,000 square foot makerspace, which encompasses our entire first floor. We have equipment like laser engravers, vinyl cutters, milling and routing machines, vacuum formers, 3D printers and scanners, and various textile equipment. So a little background, just so people know a little bit more about our makerspace. We started really, really small back in 2012. So if anyone knows Todd Colgrove, he was the director of our library at that time, and he started the Makerspace. He worked with a couple faculty members in chemistry to get a 3D printer in our space. So we were able to split the funds that way. And we also got a 3D scanner with the psychology department. So that was the start. Back then we had 2 maker wranglers, which are our student employees. That's the name we give them. And these student employees worked in the makerspace, but they also worked at the library service desk as well. So they would kind of swap shifts where they would check out books with library services and then teach people how to use the 3D printers and the 3D scanners and some of the other equipment that we had. And back then we had heavy librarian support. So the engineering librarian before me, she learned all the machines. She was teaching the students how to do everything. So it was really heavy support there. In 2016, we started to expand. We hired a makerspace specialist, and they expanded out. We got more maker wrangler student workers. They were training things up. They were working with the budget with the makerspace, creating, making sure that the makerspace was just running. We started to add more equipment. So we got more 3D printers, we got laser cutters, vinyl cutters. We also got a PCB milling machine and some soldering equipment. In 2019 is when we started to really expand. So we had about 8 to 10 Maker Wrangler student workers at that time. We had a training model, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. to teach our students how to use the equipment. And then we started getting more equipment as well. And we expanded to a secondary space, so we took over the whole first floor at that point. And today we still have about 8 to 10 maker wranglers. Typically for the entire school year, these are paid positions. And we now have a makerspace specialist, and I am a dedicated makerspace like fabrication librarian. So I work with bringing classes into the makerspace, where our makerspace specialist really runs the makerspace and makes sure everything is working, deals with the budget. So we kind of work together, which is great. And we've just slowly expanded the collection every year with different types of equipment. Just to give a little bit of context, for our student workers, we do call them Maker Wranglers. They are our resident experts in the space. They are the ones that handle the day-to-day operations of the makerspace. So they open and close the library in makerspace. They work with our patrons, so they'll answer phone calls, they'll answer the questions at the front desk. They monitor they'll walk around the makerspace, making sure that everyone is working safely. They'll answer all the questions that people might have about how to use a tool or a piece of equipment. And they'll also do our one-on-one consultations to teach people how to use the equipment and work with projects. So we heavily rely on our student workers. These are, again, paid positions. We really heavily rely on them to be able to keep this makerspace functioning and working with our patrons. So that Nick, our makerspace specialist, and I can work kind of on the back end, making sure everything stays afloat, and that we're working with bringing classes in and researchers in to use all of our services that we offer. So in order to make sure that everything runs smoothly, I developed 2 training programs. We have a patron training program and a maker wrangler training program. In 2019, that I was hired as a part-time makerspace assistant to develop these training programs. And then I was able to develop those over a couple of years, and then get those started in about 2020. I think 2021 and 2022 is about when we started offering those as programs so that we can really train our students and our patrons. Some background information. So the way we used to train our patrons pretty much before 2022 was these were one-on-one consultations. This was dedicated time where we have an online reservation system. They would reserve a machine online, say the Final Cutter. They would then come in, they would say that they have a reservation with the student worker at the front desk, and then that student would take them to the machine and they would work one-on-one to train them how to use that machine. We typically take about like hour-long time frames for that, just to make sure that they complete their project from start to finish. This takes a lot of time, especially if they need extra help with Photoshop or Illustrator to make sure that their image looks great and it's going to be able to cut or engrave really well, or depending on the machine that they're using. So it takes a long time for them to do those one-on-one consultations. What we noticed when this was taking a lot of our time, especially our student worker time. We typically have 1, maybe 2 student workers at the desk for 1 shift. So that means if there's only 1 person there, they have to man the front desk, answer the phone calls, greet people as they're coming in, answer any questions, but then they also have to do those one-on-one consultations, and their time often got split. So they were having to kind of bounce around and do a lot of different things. And there's also no standard of knowledge. Each student will be teaching something differently. So if there's a final cutting project where they're trying to make a small sticker, they might be just learning the basics, but they might not be learning certain techniques. And it really depends on the student worker's knowledge. Some students are really great with the final cutter, but maybe some aren't. But they're all expected to teach every single machine. So they might be taking shortcuts or might not be teaching to the potential of the machine. So the patron is missing out on key information. And we were also worried about safety in the makerspace too. With our wranglers having to bounce around to all the different patrons, we were worried that they weren't going to be really focusing on safety and making sure people are working well in the space because they're so focused on consultations. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a patron training program that made the patron more self-sufficient and really empower themselves to learn the machines on their own. And I will talk about that in a little bit, what that looks like. Our second training program that I developed was the Maker Wrangler training program. The way we used to train our wranglers was an apprenticeship style model. So we would have a new wrangler start. And first day, they'd start on the front desk. They'd be expected to answer phone calls, help patrons, and they were expected to shadow another wrangler for 6 months. So there was always two people on the desk, a senior wrangler and the new person. And they would pretty much just follow around that senior wrangler with all of the different consultations, answering phones, answering all of the different questions until they were comfortable enough to do that themselves. And sometimes this took about 6 months for a new wrangler to become really comfortable in the makerspace. It took a really long time for them to learn the machines because they were expected to learn the machines while they were on shift. So they were constantly getting pulled away to answer questions and then go back to learn the laser cutter. And this was just really difficult because there was no formal training essentially for our new employees who were expected to be resident experts in our space. And what we found is, again, there's no standard for knowledge that was being acquired. They were learning from a senior wrangler who knows all the machines really well, but again, they might not be comfortable with some machines, so they might be taking shortcuts, learning certain tips, and they might not be learning the full potential of the machine. So then that gets transferred to the patron, and there's a lot of missed knowledge and a lot of missed opportunities. There was also no way for me to assess their student learning. I had no idea if they were learning everything that they needed to learn about to do consultations and about all of the different machines because there was no assessment. And again, it took them a really long time to be comfortable leading consultations by themselves. So again, I wanted to create a program for the Makerspace Wranglers as well. So I did create two separate programs. My main goals were to create a consistent training program for both patrons and wranglers. I wanted to have engaging content where they're reading content, they're watching videos, and they're practicing hands-on. I wanted it to be accessible. So I wanted, again, to be different mediums so it's accessible for different types of learners and abilities. And I wanted to provide a resource that they could refer back to. Something where if they forgot something, they didn't need to ask a question of someone else. They can go back to a digital resource to find the answers. So both of our training programs are online training programs, and I created them in a learning management system called Canvas, or Web Campus. If you're familiar, if your institution has Canvas or Web Campus, that's what we use. It's a learning management system that our university uses across for all courses. So all of our students are very familiar with this. All of their course content is already in a Canvas course. I was able to get my own separate course for the Makerspace specifically, which made it really easy to integrate and for students to learn how to navigate it and use it. Other universities might have different learning management systems that they might have access to, or you might not have a learning management system. There's one that is an open source system called Sakai. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's Sakai. That's something that's also very similar to the Canvas, where you create a course and you can create different modules and pages within it. So a few different options there if you're interested in creating your own. Canvas is really, really easy to use. It's easy to access and publish content. So I can write up instructions or content in a Word document, and I can copy and paste it over to a Canvas page and then publish it, and it's good to go. I can add pictures and videos to it as well. It makes it really easy to embed those types of features. And I'll show you some examples in a little bit when I do a demonstration. And it's just nice. It also has assessment tools as well. So I can create assignments, I can create quizzes, and I can track all of the people who are enrolled in my course to see how they've done. So I can assess and see if they need to redo a course or if they've completed the coursework, which is really important for us, for the patrons, specifically to see if they've done the training. And it's really helpful for when I'm training our maker wranglers to see if they've learned everything they've needed to learn with this system. We are also really lucky. Our department has an Office of Digital Learning, or ODL. So when I first started, I didn't know how to use this system. So I set up a meeting with them and they taught me how to do everything. And I've become really comfortable now with making courses and different modules at this point. So when I first started back in 2019, we realized we needed to create a new Wrangler training program and a new patron training program. So I decided to start with the Wrangler training program first because I thought it was most important for our wranglers to be tooled up and trained so that they can transfer that knowledge to patrons. And then I was going to create the patron training secondary. And I'll talk about that progress in a little bit. So our wrangler training program is a really intensive program that we put them through. It is an in-person training. We do have online components, and I'll talk about kind of the scheduling. But when we hire students, we can hire anywhere between 1 to 4 students at a time, depending on the need for the student workers and who maybe graduated or left the makerspace. So we want them to come together and do the training together. We want them to be able to be in the makerspace so that they can interact with one another, even though they're doing their own modules. This training program is about 65 hours over a 2-week span, so about 30-ish hours per week that they're expected to be here. Again, we hire sometimes 2 to 4 employees, sometimes we might only hire 1. And we do provide this training program over winter break or summer break because it's 2 straight weeks and it's really difficult to schedule in between classes, especially if we have 3 new student workers. So we always hire typically summer or winter. This training program, we go through a lot of different content within those 65 hours. They're expected to learn how to operate all the pieces of equipment. They're expected to learn how to learn basic troubleshooting skills, how to conduct a consultation. We teach them about library protocols and procedures, pretty much how to be a student worker within the library. And we also teach them how to reference other library services in our library, but also our main library, which is located just north of us. We do have an itinerary. So I joke with the students that they're essentially at summer camp because I have pretty much a block. They know exactly where they're going to be at any given hour. And I give them this schedule so that they know what block they're supposed to be in and what they're expected to be learning so that they can just mentally prepare and know where they need to be. This schedule you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. We always start out with an introduction with our human resources liaison. So they'll talk about how to sign in, sign out. They'll talk about pay information and any key information that human resources needs them to know. We'll then do a tour of the makerspace just so they can get a good feel for what we have. We'll also do a tour of the rest of the library so that they know everything that we have available. And then we'll start getting into some of the policies. We'll also do trainings with some of our other staff employees as well. So we have other librarians and other coordinators in the library. So we'll schedule times with them so they can learn about data services and the GIS lab and the maps department so that they can see everything that's available. And then we start doing demonstrations of the machines that first day. So you can see Monday's pretty packed. We'll do introduction to vacuum former, introduction to vinyl cutter, and these are in-person demonstrations where we show them top to bottom how this works, just so they can visually see before they actually get into doing the online training programs that I created. I'll also put in mental breaks as well, and we'll do share outs at the very end. So you can see the gray part at the very bottom that says share out. This gives them some consultation practice where whatever they did that day, they're expected to talk in front of the other other new student employees and say, what did you do today? It's a quick 5 minutes and they can kind of just talk through the process so they can get used to using certain terminology and talking to a different audience of students. And what you'll notice here on the right-hand side is Monday is always a really packed day. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and the rest of the week, they'll have a dedicated day or morning or afternoon to work on a machine. So on Tuesday, you can see that I have a Canvas online module that teaches them how to use Illustrator. And it's a step-by-step process, and I'll do a demonstration in a little bit so you can see it. But it's a step-by-step process, and they're going to spend the entire morning going through that module and creating the assignment, or completing the assignment. On Wednesday, this particular student is going to be working on the vinyl cutter. And by the end of the day, they need to go through all of that and they need to complete that assignment as well. And then each day, it kind of rotates. Each student is working on a different machine or software program so that they have that dedicated time so they don't have to share that machine with someone else so they can work at their own pace. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a quick tour. So I'm going to get out of my presentation and kind of go into our Canvas modules. If you are interested, you can scan this QR code. I will also have this QR code at the very end of my presentation as well. And you can see this goes to a box folder with different resources. So I have PDF versions of all of the content instructions that I've made. I have videos that are available. I have past presentations. I have all these different things that you can kind of look through and see if you're interested in mimicking a training like this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to escape and go into our Canvas module.
Like,
So,
they're taking off my,
what was
pero,
that?
ang kailangan.
Oh,
Mhm.
all right. So I do have within the Canvas training module, I
Kaya,
it always goes on to the first
sounds
page.
nice.
So I always add students. I add students to this. So I'm a teacher within the Canvas module, so I can add any student that I want in here if I have their email address. So I'll add them in and they always end up on this landing page. So I'll have them scroll down. These landing pages are always really similar for me. I always give a description of what they're going to be learning. I always give student learning outcomes so they know what to expect. And down here, I have all of these different buttons available for different trainings that they're expected to do. If you've never been into a learning management system like this, I'll kind of show you what this is. So this is one course that they're assigned to. Give it a minute to kind of, the internet's a little slow here. Within this course, I can create different modules or buckets. And within these modules are pages of information. So I group things out. So I have a maker culture module. I have a policies and procedures module. I have a safety module, and then the students can read through the pages of this specific module. But sometimes this is overwhelming for students to scroll down and see everything they have to do. So what I did was I created buttons for this. So if this student today is working on the laser cutter training, it'll say on their schedule, they're expected to click this link. It takes them to the laser cutter module. It gives a description, student learning outcomes, and what to do at the end of their module. So the 2 assignments that they have to complete. And then the 2 options. So we have 2 laser engravers, so they have to do both trainings within that one day. So I'm going to show you the epilogue laser engraver. And what's nice, again, description, student learning outcomes, any items that are needed. So I say that they need to download these files and that they also need to grab a scrap piece of wood. And we have a scrap pile available for them to pull from. And then this is what they're going to be turning in for this module. Down here, these are links to all the specific pages. So this isn't useful for brand new students who are learning this training program. I expect the students to just click next through everything and kind of complete it as one group. But if they come back a month later and they forgot how to set up the machine, they can click up that link and it just takes them straight to that page. So it's easy for them to navigate this. And then they can see the instructions. So again, it's a resource they have access to the entire time that they're a student worker with us. So I want them to have, they can always go back to this if they're not familiar with this machine. I also, so to get started, all of my machine trainings are really similar. They have a similar setup so that the students know what to expect. So I have a machine, I have an equipment, I have an online training module for every single piece of equipment that we have. So our laser cutters, our vinyl cutters, our 3D printers, our sewing machines. So they're expected to learn how to use all of those pieces of equipment and go through this module and create those assignments. So they all have the same layout at this point. So I have a section called What is a Laser Engraver? And it's pretty much some basic information that says, here's the size of our bed. We use a compressor system. We use a BOFA filter. This is the software that it uses. Maybe why you would use this or disadvantages of using the epilogue and how much it costs. So they get some basic information right off the bat on what this machine even is. I then have patron talk. So this is something, these are things you might need to mention to when you're working with a patron. These are things you should absolutely mention at the beginning of your consultation. I also have a section for safety for every single piece of equipment. And this is a laser cutter. It could catch fire, and this is what you do if something happens for this specific machine. And then I start getting into things like these are the material policies that we have. Let me go back. And I start going into maybe what a raster and a vector is. different machine components. I give a brief overview of the software and maybe what the workspace looks like, because each machine has its own proprietary software program. And then I start getting into the actual instructions. So, for example, if I click, this is where the student is expected to sit at the machine with this open on the computer, and they follow step by step. They read a step, they do the step, either in the software program or on the machine. And they follow along with what I've done. I have the steps, I bold things that they need to do. I have lots of images. Some of my modules, I have more video so they can follow along that way. So this is what they're supposed to do by the end of this page, essentially. And it keeps going until they get to the very end of it. I do also have specific callouts. So if there's a troubleshooting, something that we know there's always an issue with this software or machine, I plug in that troubleshooting tip so that they know how to do that if it ever comes up. Sometimes I'll add extra like tabs. So this is how you vectorize in the software system. And I always have a progress bar at the bottom so that they know what to expect. So they know they're 60% of the way through. So they know if it's getting close to the end of the time, they should probably be going through a little bit quicker. At the very end of the training, so after they complete all of the steps, I always have an inspiration page of different things that we've made in the Makerspace using this machine. I also have a troubleshooting page, again, other troubleshooting things that might come up. I have a cheat sheet, so if they just need a quick reference on all of the quick steps, I have that available. And then I have a practice assignment. So again, these are step by step. So you need to import this specific file. I want you to vectorize that file. I want you to add text, and I say what text it is. And I want them to determine what settings do you need to do this to complete this engraving and cutting. And then once they complete it, they need to take a picture of it, upload it, and that's how I assess whether they've completed something or not. I do have a rubric at the bottom of this page. So when I get that photo in and I'm grading them at the end of the training program, I can see, all right, did they write text? Can they use the text tool? Yes, no. Can they add a shape? Yes or no. Did they vectorize the image? Yes or no. Can they cut the shape? We also have a rotary tool, so it's a round tool. So were they able to create an engraving using the rotary tool? So it's a really simple rubric that I've created, but when you look at the examples, it's clear whether they were able to meet that skill or not. All of my students have done a great job with meeting these skills, so I haven't had to have them redo the training for any piece of machinery, which is nice. But if they missed things, I would have them go back, redo that assignment so that I can regrade them, so that I know that they are competent enough with this tool to be able to teach this to our patrons when they get to that point with their job. And then so again, we have this for all of our different machines that we have available. It is a pretty lengthy training program. Again, they have maybe a half day or a full day for each machine. We have a lot of tools available at that point. So I will go back to our presentation. And again, I see some questions coming in, so I'll answer questions at the very end. But let me. All right. So this training program has been very successful for us. We've done this for a few years now. I think 2021 was our first year that we implemented this. We did one in the winter, and then we've done one every summer since. The students retain information really well. They have dedicated time at the machine where they're not distracted, so they can learn everything that they need to learn. They've become a lot more comfortable providing consultations as well. So I have a segment where I teach the students how to conduct a consultation so that they're not going in blind. I mean, these are college students who might have never taught someone something before. So I go through and I give them tips and tricks, questions that they should be asking, and kind of how to work with that patron to do a consultation. And we've noticed that there has been less staff intervention. So before, the Makerspace specialist and I were constantly getting questions for how to do something. So now we get a lot less of those questions. Because they know that they can go back to the module to find that information. If there are any questions, it's more complex information that I don't have in the module. So they're learning an advanced skill I don't have available for them. So it's really great for us to be able to give them more autonomy with their own making. And I think this is just great because we've noticed this is they get their hands-on experience with this, and they're doing several assignments throughout those 2 weeks, and they're making every single day, which I think is really great. While this training program is great, really, really fantastic for us, there are a few limitations that we've noticed over the years. It is a very expensive training. I see there is a question about how much we pay the student workers. I think right now we are at $12 an hour, which is comparable to what we pay at the university level for all student workers. So that's something we can't determine. Our university determines that number. We were able to negotiate a little bit more, so they're technically student worker twos because they have more expertise than a student worker one typically would throughout the rest of the university. So they get paid a little bit more. We do also have a student worker 3 level. So these are our senior wranglers where they've been here for a while and they have extra responsibilities. And I want to say that's $13-ish an hour. I could double check those. But if we're doing 65 hours over a 2-week span, that's a lot of money. And if we have 3 students, that could be a few $1,000s budgeted for just those 2 weeks for those new student workers. So that's something where we have to budget that in and get approval from our library administration before we can go through with the training program. And that's something where we've been able to do it in the past and they've always funded it, but we have a lot of budgetary constraints this upcoming year. So it's a conversation that we're going to have. Luckily, we don't need to hire any student workers this year, but it's something we're always worried about. And because it's a 2-week straight training program, it is very time consuming for me and the Makerspace specialist, because even though they're doing blocks where they're working on the machine, we're still available for answering questions and working with the other students as well that are training. But we're constantly teaching blocks about troubleshooting, consultations, library policy. So we're pretty much stacked within those 2 weeks. So it's really a lot of dedication for it. And the third thing is it's really difficult to schedule with students' schedules over the summer. We've noticed that last year we hired 5 students, which was a lot of students for us. We had a lot of people graduating, so we needed to rehire. We had to divvy that up to be between 2 separate 2-week programs. So we were busy for 1 month solid because people had summer classes, they were taking vacations. We had one student who was a brand new freshman coming in who wasn't even on campus yet, and she lived in California and we're in Nevada. So we had to create 2 separate weeks for that. So that's something to consider if you're trying to do something like this, is it's hard to get students together for this. So that is the end of our Maker Wrangler training program. Our patient training program came next. So about 2021 to 2022 is when I was developing those and starting to get this training program implemented. This is a very similar program to what we do with the Wrangler training. It is still it's an online only program right now. And it's all online through our Canvas modules. The modules look very, very similar to what I created for the Wrangler training, but they're just a little bit different. So the Wrangler training is focused on how do I teach this to a patron? The patron training program is how do I use this machine? So it's similar steps on step-by-step how to create text, how to create shapes, how to do all of these different things. But I removed all of the patron comments, like tell the patron this. I removed all of that stuff. I also removed some of the technical terminology. Our student workers typically come in with a higher tech. Some of them are engineers who know a little bit more about laser cutters or 3D printers. So I removed a lot of technical information and I added a lot more information on like teaching them the basic concepts of 3D scanning, vinyl cutting. And I'm a little bit more thorough with how I describe those things so that any patron who comes in can do this beginner friendly training program. And I added a lot more general Makerspace information into that program as well, so that they know what the Makerspace is and how to find information about the Makerspace. So the training program consists of 2 trainings. We always have them do the Makerspace 101 training first. This training program talks about Makerspace location, any basic safety information you need to know about being in a Makerspace, community guidelines. So we've added those. We have information about what equipments we have with videos on what a laser cutter even is. We have how to make a reservation, how to or signing the membership agreement, and then there is a quiz at the very end. And then once they complete Makerspace 101, every single person who enters the Makerspace needs to complete this online first. And then the second is if they want to use a piece of equipment, like a laser cutter, vinyl cutter, etc., they complete the equipment training program. So this is if they want to use the laser cutter, they only need to do the laser cutter training. And again, this is an introduction to the equipment, safety information, information about software, step-by-step operations. I show them project examples, and then they have to pass a quiz based to see if they read through everything. The difference with this program is it's not hands-on, it is online only. So they are not expected to sit next to the machine and create a product and turn in an assignment. This is something that they can do at home, really anywhere that they have a computer and internet access. We wanted to make it easier for the students. We do get a lot of students coming in each semester, so we didn't want to get bogged down with them having to block an hour to do the training program. And then have to, while other people are trying to work on course assignments or other projects. So we decided they just do online training and then they come in and they can use the machine at that point. If they have questions, the Wrangler is still there to answer those questions, but it's not expected to be dedicated one-on-one consultation time because they've already done the training ahead of time. So this is another QR code that I have. This link takes you straight to our community hub page. So this is where our patrons will sign up for the program and self-enroll into my Canvas modules. So I'll give it just a little bit. So if you want to scan that QR code, you can. But I'm going to get out of this presentation and again go into what the community hub looks like as a quick demonstration. So just some context, our community hub is something that our Office of Digital Learning created. It's a really nice resource for us. So it features all online training programs that the university offers. That's not credit based. So right now it's mostly our training programs and some other library programs. And I'll show you in a second what that looks like. But it's something that I didn't create, but we were able to upload our courses on there so people can self-enroll for these free courses that we offer. So let me kind of get out of here. All right, so this is our community hub page. The first one you'll notice is our Makerspace 101 training program. We have laser cutter, our @ONE, which is within our main library. They have a few podcast suite training programs or sound studio programs, and then a couple of our other Makerspace training programs. Again, these are all free. Students, faculty, and staff members can enroll into this program, but community members can also enroll in this too. So we have people who come in who buy library cards to be able to access certain resources. They can enroll here as well. So they'll click the enroll button, they'll fill out their information, and they're automatically enrolled into this Canvas module, and they are good to go. And they can do this all on their own, which is nice. What this looks like is as soon as they're enrolled, they can open up their Canvas course, they log in with their NetID or password that they created, and then they can see our main page. This is where they're going to land on. How can they access the Makerspace? And it kind of goes through like, you need to create this, you need to complete Makerspace 101. Whoop. So I'm just going to go to the module view just so you can see what this looks like. So what we have is we do an introduction to the Makerspace page. So this is the first page they'll see when they click that blue button. This is what should pop up. Again, description, what they're expected to learn by the end. They have to complete a quiz and they have to sign our membership agreement. There's also proof of completion. So with our community hub, there's an option to generate a certificate at the end. So if they pass the quiz, a certificate's automatically generated in our community hub page. And when they come in to use a piece of equipment, they show that certificate to my student worker and they say, I've done the epilogue training program, here's the proof. And then we put that in our own separate system and then they're good to go to use the machine. If they don't have that proof or we can't find that proof within like the quizzes, then they have to sit and do the training either in the Makerspace or they can go and do it online and come back later to use the machine. So it is required to do Makerspace 101 and whatever equipment training they need to do to use that piece of equipment. But Makerspace 101 is really easy. Information about how the training works. Let's see. This just talks more about like what's expected for the training. I do have some icons on here. So it says Some machines are consultation only, like our embroidery machine, I don't have a module for that, so they have to do a consultation, where these are online trainings. There's some machines that require no training, so like if you're using a soldering kit, you don't need to do training for that, you can just use it. So I laid that information out really specifically. Information about how to find the library and how to make a reservation is available. Again, I do very basic makerspace safety, so you need to protect your eyes, protect your ears, wear gloves if you need to wear gloves, closed-toed shoes are recommended. We want you to clean your space up, things like that. Just because some people might have never worked in a makerspace or a workshop before. I have a very basic fire evacuation procedure, so if they're curious, they know exactly where to go if a fire does happen, how to operate certain tools. And then we get to the community guidelines, which is really, really important for us. So this is the point where if we notice someone breaking a rule, we say, you signed this agreement, and this is exactly where you read that information from. So we developed this a number of years ago, so I implement it here so every single person knows our community guidelines. I have an overview of what we even have available on our Makerspace because we have a lot of stuff available. And then I start getting into the services we offer. So what's a maker wrangler? What can they help you with? And I go through what they can do. We have consultation policy, so I state that policy. And then I start getting into what are the machines, and I have a video about what this machine does, and it's a demonstration to kind of see if someone's interested in using it. How much does it cost? What are the applications? Like, what can you use this machine? What's being done? And then at the very bottom, I always have a how do I gain access to this machine? It's step by step what you need to do and what you need to bring in yourself. And then if they want to use the machine, they need to self-enroll in this training program. And I think, yes, that is pretty much it. So I will go back to the presentation. So our patron training program has gone okay so far. It hasn't been ideal because it is online only, which is easier for us because we're hoping that this means if they're doing all the basic information ahead online, our student workers can work on other projects, help other patrons, and be able to help more people rather than sitting one-on-one for an hour with one person. We've noticed that hasn't changed much. There is no hands-on component with this training module. And I think people don't retain the information as well. So what we'll notice is they complete the training online. The next day they'll come in and they still need one-on-one help. They still need someone to help them through every step of the process, even though they read all the information ahead of time. And I think it's because there's no hands-on component to it. The quiz isn't really an effective way to see if they assess the skills. I ask them basic information about what software program are we using? What are the steps of vectorizing? But it doesn't quite click for them because they're not completing an assignment and turning it in and getting that hands-on practice. We still get lots and lots of questions about how to actually use the machine. But one thing that has helped is I give a lot of information about what to expect ahead of time. So we get a lot less questions about what our material policy looks like. So like what materials can we put into the laser cutter? We don't get those questions anymore because they got that information. We don't get any questions about how to make a reservation because they already know how to make a reservation based on the module. So in some cases, it's really helped us, especially the Makerspace 101 has really helped us. But the machine modules haven't been quite as successful as we were hoping they would be. There are some limitations. It is online only, so it doesn't have as much engagement. We've noticed patrons tend to just skip through sections. And when I look at the quiz, they got it wrong. I'm like, well, they clearly didn't read that section because it's a pretty obvious answer to me. So we know that they skipped that section. And patrons have been more resistant to online trainings, we've noticed. They want to come in and they want to get that one-on-one hands-on help. They don't want to do an online training ahead of time. Maybe it's just not their type of learning style. Maybe they learn best with verbal communications. But we've had a little bit of resistance on doing the online training program, which is, it's hard because we want to be able to do the one-on-one, but it's harder to manage the workload that we have because we get really, really busy. So kind of finishing up this presentation, moving forward to kind of go back to the regular training program. I think the training program has gone really well. There's not a lot that I want to change besides updating things every year. We get different software programs, maybe every year it gets the software gets updated. So I have to go through and change some of that information. But one thing I want to do is I want to put more of our maker competencies throughout the training module. So I work with, so anyone is familiar with the University of Texas Arlington, they developed a maker competencies framework back in 2017. That's when they got the grant to create them. So that's what I teach out of. So I'd like to implement some of those competencies so that my student workers are learning some of those skills. But otherwise, I think this training program has been really well and really effective. Moving forward with our patron training program, we ideally would like to implement on in-person group training opportunities. It's something that we wanted to do last year, but because of our budget cuts and our student wage cuts, we haven't been able to successfully implement that yet. So we want to give people the option where they could either do the online training, pass the quiz, and they're good to go and they're certified, or they can come in and we'll offer a few sessions per week that are maybe the same time frames or the same times essentially, and they can come in and we can have 5 to 10 people come and do that session, and we teach them how to in person use the machine, and then they pass the same quiz. We would love to do that. We just don't have the budget or the time for that right now, because we would want our student workers to be able to lead those sessions. And we might need to hire one specific student worker to do those sessions for all the machines that we have. We would have a lot of trainings throughout the day that we would offer. So that's something that we haven't quite been able to do yet, but we think that would be a more successful way to teach our patrons how to use things and still get away from that one-on-one where it could be 1-on-5 or 1-on-10 model. We also want to focus more on accessibility and maybe adding in more videos or different types of learning modalities so that more people are learning it. Because right now it's a lot of blanket text and a lot of pictures, but videos and audio might be a lot more helpful for people to learn the same information. Finally, we're on to the last page. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email is right there. The QR code does go to those training resources that I talked about earlier, kind of throughout this whole session. So feel free to go through there. Feel free to use anything if you think it'd be helpful for your makerspace. But I will start answering questions right now. So I'll go through the chat and kind of go down through there. And then if anyone has any additional questions, you can kind of just speak up with our last 5 minutes. Okay, so I answered student worker pay. The second question is, how do you refresh returning student skills after summer away? Do they redo the training assignments? At this point, we don't have them redo the training program. Our Makerspace is open all summer. So we typically have the students working year round. So they'll start in the fall and then they'll work through the summer and then just continue through the fall. Some of our student workers take 2-3 week vacations where they go back home, or they'll go on vacations with their families and they come back, but it's not long enough where they're losing that skill. Throughout the semester, we'll notice some students they navigate towards machines they like most. And then they'll kind of stay away from some other machines. So if we notice that they're not doing well on our 3D scanners, maybe we give them a project and they didn't quite complete it very well, we will have them redo it sometime during the middle of the semester just to refresh their skill. But we don't have like a dedicated time for that. The second question is, do you also have online guides available for patrons to reference while using the tools, or would they reference the Canvas course? So they would reference the Canvas course. They have access to that Canvas course as long as they are affiliated here. So if they're students and they graduate their senior year, they'll lose access to the course, but then they can pay to become a community member and they can get access again. And then they just have those Canvas modules on there for as long as they're a community member. So we expect that if they have questions, they can go back to that training program. Same with faculty, staff, and community members too. The third question is, could you estimate how many hours you spent creating the modules? Luckily, this was a product of COVID. So when we were in lockdown was when I first started, got hired. So like I started at the end of 2019, so early 2020. I was able to come into the library and be alone in the library and work on the modules, but it's a lot of work. I mean, it might be like 4 to 5 hours per piece of equipment. And that's me sitting down, learning all of the steps. I'm usually sitting down with like the Makerspace specialist who knows the machine really well. I sit with him, he does everything, and I just am rapidly writing down instructions. I'll clean all of those instructions up and I'll start implementing, putting them into the Canvas module, and I'll start snipping and taking pictures. I'll start adding in extra little bits and pieces. For some machines, I add videos, so that takes a lot longer because I'm making videos for how to do things. But it's definitely at least a few hours per module of work. So it took me really like most of like 2020 to kind of develop everything from start to finish. It was like probably like almost a year project for me, which was a long time to be dedicated. But that was my primary job, which was really nice. So the fourth question is, do you have your Maker Wrangler training with projects available for patrons to use? Hold on, do you have your Maker Wrangler? I guess we don't really have the projects available. They're making really small like products. So usually the students can keep the Maker Wranglers can keep those products at the end. But we do have lots of examples available above every single machine, so that the patrons, if they come in to do a tour, they can see what's available to them. But we don't typically like keep the Wrangler training projects. Those are kind of all on them to kind of keep. So more of a comment than a question, but I love how organized all of this is. Thank you. That's why it took me so long, is because we didn't have anything at all. I had to develop this from scratch, and this was my first library job, so I had to really spend time to think about how I wanted this to be organized. So that took a long time. Now it's easy for me to add, we have a new 3D printer, so I have to create a new module for that, and that's going to take me a few hours to kind of upload that and get that going because I know what I'm doing. But I've been doing this for 5 years now, so it's taken some time. Are there any last minute questions? I think we've just about hit time at this point. All right, so I'll let that go. I guess I will stop sharing my screen at this point. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you coming to this talk. Please email me if you have any questions about anything else. Thanks.